You asked for it. Here it is. It's a podcast from Apathetic Enthusiasm.
Coming to you live from a planet where our greatest foes are our greatest source of income. I guess it's a place where you either borrow or get money from your foe, but then they're your foe too, so they borrow money from you. I don't know how the economy works. It's confusing, but this is International RSS, the unofficial Rick and Morty podcast.
It's just so confusing. Like, are the transactions mutual? How does it? It's anyway.
We hate each other, but at the same time, like, hey, can I borrow $50? I need to, and it's like, well, crap. Like, what then happens? Then it's like you give your money, your foe's money to. What happens if you give your foe's money to like one of their like secondary foes? And like, no. Like it's like an American Express. Like we don't accept that card here.
We don't accept your foes here. Hello, everybody. I'm Travis.
Hey, everybody. I'm Brandon. Welcome to the show, International RSS, the unofficial Rick and Morty podcast, where we talk about nothing but Rick and Morty stuff all the time. Every time,
Nothing but Rick and Morty, especially in our first segment that we'll get to in just a moment. But thank you for being here. Thank you for listening or watching wherever you consume this content. We're glad you're here. Hopefully you caught our last episode where we talked about the release date for season 7. That's right. Season 7 of Rick and Morty is coming out October 15th. Super excited for that. And we are back in full swing podcasting in preparation for the brand new Rick and Morty season. So if you want to follow along with us, anything else that we're doing here with the podcast, you can follow us on X at Rick and Morty Pod. I'm never going to say it normally. Somebody clip that for like 5 months from now, and I'm just saying X normally. You can also follow us on Facebook, facebook.com/Rick and Morty Podcast. We're on Instagram, Rick and Morty Pod. Send us an email, rickandmortypodcast@gmail.com. Let us know your thoughts about the upcoming season. We're on Threads, Rick and Morty Pod. Head over to the subreddit. Maybe you had different opinions about Reddit over the last summer. But maybe you want to come back, check out rickandmorty.reddit.com or our subreddit, rickandmortypodcast.reddit.com, and then our website, rickandmortypod.com. We are putting the videos out there on our YouTube. You can go to youtube.com/apatheticenthusiasm or support our show directly at patreon.com/apatheticenthusiasm. That's it. That's how you get a hold of us. Hopefully you're writing them down because I was saying them very quickly.
No, that was probably the most effective you've been in a long time, other than the X. Other than that part,
X.
it was so smooth. It was crystalline.
Elon wants to call it X.
It's like what I wanted to call stuff when I was 6 years old, right? And like, yeah, this is easy because it's one of the only letters I know. Good. Name it X. Anyways, yeah, cool. How you doing, Travis?
I'm great. I feel strong, healthy. How about you? How are you doing?
Strong and healthy as well. Nothing
Good.
wrong.
Nope.
No diseases or things affecting me.
Perfect. I can't wait for you to be full of vigor and excitement throughout the entirety of this episode. Shall we get to it?
Let's shall, my friend.
All right, let's start with everyone's favorite segment of the show. It's a segment we like to call Semi-Pertinent News.
Travis almost forgot what the name of the segment was. It's Semi-Pertinent News, of course. Of course, it's Semi-Pertinent News. Da-da-da-da-da-da.
I didn't forget the name of the segment. I forgot what segments were called. I forgot the word segment.
Oh, you forgot the word segment. Yeah. Travis forgot the word of the thing that goes in between things.
All right. It's been a minute since we did a full episode of Interdimensional RSS, including Semi-Pertinent News. But I wanted to revisit a show that is produced by Dan Harmon, co-creator of Rick and Morty, that has been out for a few weeks now on Apple TV+. That is, of course, Strange Planet, Nathan Pyle's brand new series. This is based on the comic characters from his webcomic series that you can find on many a social media platform. I've followed these for a long time. They're super funny, and Brandon, you and I have both gotten a chance to watch some of these episodes. I just want like a quick, super short, succinct. How do you feel about the show? What do you think of it so far?
Short, succinct. Okay, here we go. Short and succinct.
It's good.
If you like the webcomic, you will enjoy what they're trying to do with the show.
Yes.
I think that the hardest part about the show is understanding what they're talking about because they are describing things. Eventually you get it, you're like, oh, okay, mild poison is alcohol. Got it.
Yes.
Jitter liquid, coffee, right? Those types of things eventually you pick up, but it takes a little while to understand. And sometimes when they introduce new concepts, you're like, okay, what are they talking about?
Yes.
But other than that, what I really like about that show is the positivity that ends at the end of every episode. Travis, your go.
Yeah, I think the show, I have the exact same critique in that the show is really positive. I think the characters are great. I find it very interesting that they're able to have these beings that have no names, no genders, still somehow create recognizable and rememberable characters from episode to episode. Rememberable. But the thing that makes the webcomic so great is the way they would talk differently. They would talk about things differently. They would describe stuff from the environment using different terms. And I think that was some of those gags were some of the best parts about the webcomic. The translation from the written form to the spoken form can be difficult to follow at times because until you learn those cues, jitter liquid, mild poison, what is
Mouth stones.
Mouth stones are your teeth. Your teeth are mouth stones. But as they're just having a conversation and the conversation is moving very quickly, you have less time to process. Okay, I love the feel of the mild poison running over my mouth stones. What I have to do the mental gymnastics to connect all the things. Yeah. Oh, okay, they're talking about yes, that and this and that. So the show is good. I think you should check it out. If you have Apple TV Plus, go see it. Go watch it. But yeah, and congrats to Dan and Nathan and Steve for the new show and wish you all the success on future seasons.
All right. Well, so that's our first bit of news. Our next bit of news comes to us by way of X.
Elon's new website they've never used before.
Via IGN, although the tweet we have is from Culture Crave at Culture Crave. This news
that's Boy George's band. Culture Crave.
Do
is that right?
You really want to main me? Is what Zack Snyder says or sings about Fortnite. So, yeah, Zack Snyder says he got deeply into playing Fortnite. He does 0 builds. I don't know what that means. And mains Mr. Meeseeks. Oh, there you go. Semi-pertinent news.
Starting to get weird.
Zack Snyder, director of such hits as Watchmen, Dawn of the Dead remake, and the upcoming Star Wars knockoff, mains Mr. Meeseeks in Fortnite.
Yeah,
so,
you don't understand what it means that when he doesn't build. You ever play Fork Knife? Never play
0
Fork Knife?
build. Okay.
0 build.
So, when I think of builds, I think of like League of Legends or World of Warcraft, RPGs where builds are specific talent points and certain talent trees with different glyphs, whatever, to make you powerful in some way or shape or form. But yeah, in Fortnite you build stuff as you're shooting. So he's a 0 builder, which I mean, tell you what, 0 builders make sense because old men who play that game who can't be bothered to figure out the build mechanics.
Nope.
Are
That's us. 0 builders. I saw this post and then scrolled down and the next like quoted tweet underneath it is the IGN interview where he says exactly what's in this tweet. So anyway, congrats Zack Snyder. Hope you enjoy Fortnite it's still a game. That's
And good luck on your DC universe. Okay.
yeah. This is anyway. That's about it, except for
Oh, shoot. Yeah, of course, Travis. It's a Dan Harmon social media minute.
Dan Harmon quit X, and he wasn't on Twitter anymore, but he still has an Instagram and sometimes some Threads. It's Dan Harmon's social media minute.
All right.
That was the grunge Dan Harmon. Yeah, Dan Harmon's. I mean, he's striking. Unfortunately, these writers and actors strikes they continue on with no end in sight. I don't know. I'm not part of the industry. What do I know about it? So most of Dan Harmon's Instagram lately is him potentially breaking picket lines by sharing Cody's show Jury Duty still on his social media. There's posts of him bowling and also posts of his dogs. This is a particular favorite of mine with a caption that reads, "Among climate change's more deceptively adorable faces is that of the Cavia frigidus, the giant Arctic guinea pig. Often misclassified as a miniature polar bear, this colossal rodent has been driven south by shrinking ice caps and Russian poachers, bringing its omnivorous, tundra-hardened appetite to unprepared North American biomes. String cheese and blueberry farmers are reporting record losses, and by 2030, 40% of California's popcorn may vanish."
It's a picture of a dog.
It's a picture of a cute dog, and that's Dan Harmon.
It's not a guinea pig at all. Oh, Dan Harmon, you got us again.
Oh, what a trickster! What a trickster!
I didn't know what was going on. But no, it's a dog. Dan Harmon, good on you.
All right, that's it. If you want to follow Dan Harmon, do that. All right, that's it for semi-pertinent news. And when we come back, we are going to be taking a deep dive into the history of Rick Prime right after these messages. All right, everybody, we are back, and it is time for everyone's favorite part of the podcast. That's right. It's the main thing.
Travis didn't forget the name of this segment. No, he didn't. He didn't forget the name of the segment. It's the main thing. Welcome to the main thing, baby. Welcome to it. It's the main thing segment brought to you by Travis and Brandon.
Very good job, Brandon. Very good.
Yeah.
All right. So, as many of you know, season 7 is just about a month and a half away. I can't believe it. It's just right around the corner. It's sneaking up on us. And a couple of weeks ago, there was a social media post where Adult Swim was teasing the release of the release date. And we talked about this in the bonus episode. But there was a little trailer. It was just like a montage of all of the appearances of Rick Prime over the course of the show. It was almost just like a deep dive into the backstory of Rick, his tortured past, and his facing off with Rick Prime. So we thought, yes, there's obviously been talk about Rick Prime in the last season. Maybe it's time, before we get into season 7, to take a look back, explore the canonical misadventures of Rick. The show is making that adjustment. It's moving towards more, interwoven storylines throughout the seasons. So let's adjust too. Let's go back and look at the appearances of Rick Prime, and sort of like ask ourselves some questions and figure out our thoughts before we get into season 7. You ready for that, Brandon? You excited?
I'm excited. I've got all the energy in the world for this. So here's one of the questions I want to ask you, Travis. Now, we episode prepped for this, and we
It
don't
happened. Believe it or not.
fair
There's
listener.
notes.
Fair listener, we don't always episode prep for these things, but today we did. Now we looked at the trailer. What was a trailer of clips, a clip show trailer. And Travis, this was your idea to go back and watch some of those episodes. Maybe not the full episode, but watch some of the episodes to actually like maybe uh, refresh our memory on the Rick versus Rick Prime stuff.
Yeah.
What was your methodology for going back in time into the seasons and finding it out? Did you go chronologically? Did you actually just pick pieces and then move on to new episodes, or did you watch the whole episode? Tell me more.
I mean, the first thing that I did was try to just remember what episodes had any sort of bit of Rick Prime in them, and the ones that stood out to me were obviously the season 3 premiere, the surprise April Fool's podcast that put Szechuan sauce on the map. The Rick Shank Redemption. This was the and really just any episode that had like Rick backstory were episodes that I tried to look into. So started with Rick Shank Redemption, and then really most of my process was going through Max and looking at the episodes and looking at and be like, was there any Rick Prime? No, I don't think there was. No. Oh, season 5, Returnal Friendshine, and Rick Mirai Jack. There's got to be some stuff in there, right? There's a bunch of backstory stuff in there, and then obviously the premiere and finale from season 6. Those are ones we've sort of talked to and thought about. So I watched those episodes in order from oldest to newest. But if there was like B plot stuff happening, I would kind of like skip ahead a little bit, be like, all right, like I've seen this episode 6 or 7 times. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit and see what else. Although there were some episodes, tell you what, Rick Shank Redemption being one of them, where I was just like, it's classic episode. I watched the majority of that for sure.
Okay, all right. I did the opposite of you. I actually started with the season 6 finale, and the season 6 finale is Rick Miss Vacation or whatever.
Yeah.
And like, okay, there's stuff in here that is related to Rick Prime stuff. But okay, I guess I'll start here. Wait, is there stuff in there? I don't. I'm tripping.
Yeah, no, there totally was. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, yeah. It's stupid lightsaber stuff.
Yeah.
Anyways,
Rictional Mortpoon Rickmas Mortification has actually a fair amount of Rick Prime stuff in it.
Yeah. That's right. The whole reason I got confused was because that the whole reason that there's drama there is because we find out that Rick had replaced himself at the beginning of that whole Knights of the Sun thing.
Yeah.
And it goes backwards. So I started there. I went backwards because I wanted to have the answer and then look back at the clues that they gave us throughout the seasons to then like, okay, cool. Have they changed anything? No, they haven't changed anything at all. This is really great. So you started from the beginning towards the end. I went from the end towards the beginning.
Yeah, and it's interesting when you watch some of these episodes back, and I mean, season 3, we're talking years and years and years ago that those episodes came out, and we're talking pre-contract negotiations, pre-COVID, like long time ago. These episodes were out. A phenomenal episode, and our first glimpse at all into Rick's past, which I think a lot of fans really gravitated towards. But for those of you that maybe haven't watched that episode in a really long time, the part of the episode that I really want to dig into is where Rick is explaining how he invented interdimensional travel because the Gronflamites are trying to get that technology. They're in a brainalyzer, right? So
301, the Rick Shank Redemption, right?
Yeah. And so Rick finally goes to the garage where it all happens, and this is where we first see Rick Prime. He appears offering Rick interdimensional travel. He sort of introduces the idea to him. Rick is just trying to create some sort of like teleportation device, but Rick Prime opens up this idea to travel across the multiverse, so to speak. He talks about a nonstop party where all the guests are the only person we like. And it my impression looking back on this was that Rick Prime is sort of like recruiting him. He's saying, "Hey, Ricks, don't turn this down." So and then and then eventually when Rick does, Rick Prime tries to kill him, and he ends up killing Beth and Diane. So my first question is, what do you think Rick Prime was trying to recruit him for? Do you think he was actually trying to recruit him, or is he trying to like weed out different types of Ricks? Because later we see like the infancy of sort of a citadel of Ricks. Do you think that those things are connected, or?
Yeah, I wonder. Obviously, he's trying to get him. He's trying to get him for some reason,
Yeah.
for whatever the reason is, and there's a little bit of a conspiracy there, I think, because going back to all the way to with the episode Rick Marai Jack, the montage of Rick's backstory. There's a little clip where Rick is after the death of Diane and Beth. He's going and he's killing random Ricks all over the place.
Yeah.
And one of the Ricks he finds, and right before he kills him, or right before he dies, there's like a little map of the galaxy and a bunch of different planets.
Yeah.
And then that Rick expires, and our Rick is angry about that. He's like, "Argh!" because it wasn't the right one. But it implies that there are some Ricks who know what's going on that are not telling our Rick about what's happening. So what is that recruiting? I don't know. We can't obviously we can theory craft all we want, but maybe it is a Citadel thing. Maybe it is.
Yeah.
Maybe it's doing what evil President Morty was doing at some point in time as well, right? Trying to escape it, or trying to harness the power of all of them, like get every single Rick in the same place and use them to his advantage.
Yeah, it's possible, and that could be one of the reasons why our Rick, I guess that's the easiest way to explain him, or we could say C-137, but why he's so anti even like those gatherings of Ricks that we see in the montage of his backstory during what is it, Solarix? No,
Yes,
Rick Marai Jack.
Rick Jack. Yeah.
510. Anyway, after his family dies, and this was something that I had sort of forgotten about. I had it mixed up in my head because in that backstory, Rick's like, "This is how I invented interdimensional travel," and I'm like, "Oh, he didn't really invent it because that other Rick shows up, Rick Prime, and he invents it, right?" But it's after his family dies that Rick actually invents on his own a portal gun, excuse me, that he can then use to travel the multiverse. Do you think Rick Prime was like playing 4 steps ahead, some 3D chess, to be like, all right, if I kill his family, this guy's going to invent portal travel? Or was it just part of Rick's grieving process? Like, my family's gone, I'm going to go find this guy, and he happens to invent portal travel that way.
Wait, okay. So let me parse your question again.
Yeah.
You're asking if Rick Prime did that on purpose to motivate our Rick to invent portal travel?
Yeah.
Or are you saying our Rick just happened to get lucky because he was in the car waiting to pick them up in ice cream, and because that sent him on a journey of vengeance?
Yes. Yeah.
I like to think that he's on a mission of vengeance. I like that angle more.
Yeah.
I don't necessarily like the ex machina of Rick Prime doing that on purpose, like only killing the wife and kid, like fridging the wife and kid. So Rick does this thing.
Yeah.
Because I like what I liked about the Rickshack Redemption. What I liked about that scene, taking all the Gronflemite stuff out of it, taking all the modifying uh, memory type things out of it. What I like is it's a Rick who is good, kind-hearted. He has kindness in him, and he was going to give up science, and his family was taken away from him, and so he went back to science. Somewhere deep down inside is still a good heart in him, and he went on this act of vengeance.
Yeah.
And we see that going back to where he goes back to the original planet, where he thought, yeah, maybe Rick Prime would show back up to get the original Morty, but then he's stuck with him. He's stuck with that whole family, and now he's with that family, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that idea of Rick being willing to let go of things only to be drawn back in by unfortunate circumstances or my voice is also disappearing now. I think that's something we're gonna see later on as we round out this discussion too. So that's kind of gets revisited throughout the history of Rick too. So that's the first time we see Rick Prime. It's also highly questionable for several seasons, right? Because Rick literally refers to that as a made-up backstory. Within that same episode, he says, he tricked them with a made-up backstory. So there's always that part of, in some fans ate it up and thought all of that was legit. The writers have since then used that version of his backstory to kind of push the story forward and confirm some of that. Maybe parts of it weren't exactly accurate, but it clearly seems like Rick has used the actual events of his past to trick the Grumflemites. Because when we get that montage of scenes and Morty's only response is, "Ooh, dead wife," like that's that 2 season later confirmation that that's really what happened.
Yeah, yeah. And that there's the aspect of memory that it's the same way that lineups aren't always accurate, or like sketch artists aren't always accurate, right? Because we versus repressed memories, where they're like, there's a memory that I didn't even know I had. Oh, now I have it. Whereas there's no real evidence for repressed memories. Shifting our memories to convince ourselves that certain things happen certain ways, that happens. And so the whole Rick Shank Redemption, changing the code to hack the Brainalyzer in order to get into the lights, that's part of it. But
Yeah.
he might not necessarily modify everything. So, but I think it is a clever way for the writers to be like, well, yeah, it didn't happen exactly how it happened in his memory, but it's because he could modify little bits of it here and there.
Yeah, because he's Rick and he's super smart, right? There it goes. All right. The next
Okay.
couple episodes that I watched didn't necessarily have Rick Prime in them, but I thought that they were still very telling about Rick's past. The first being 508, which was Nocturnal Sunshine of the Spotless Mort. This was Rick diving into Bird Person's subconscious to try and bring him back from the dead. Not a whole lot in there Rick Prime-wise, but there were some early scenes where Rick and Bird Person are fighting like gangs of Ricks. I thought that was interesting, and looking at how Rick looked in those scenes, I tried to place him sort of in chronologically in his own history, which then if you skip 2 episodes ahead to Rick Morai Jack and you get that montage of Rick's past, then you kind of get all those pieces put back together. So it starts back with Rick Prime in the garage scene from 301. Then Rick starting to explore other dimensions, starting to try and find Rick Prime. It starts kind of innocent, like I'm just going to see what's out there, see if I can find this guy. It starts to turn darker over time as Rick is like it shows again him with Bird Person. They're becoming like these guerrilla terrorist type group fighting the Gronflamites, and Rick really loses himself through this process to the point where he is just on a no kidding killing spree, just trying to get rid of the early council of Ricks, mass bombings in theater. Like it gets real dark. And then eventually, in a weird twist, he helps create the Citadel, which you could probably be another conversation unto itself. But I really like these scenes as sort of a picture of the progress that Rick makes over time, highs and lows, right? But it really helps show how this original confrontation with Rick Prime has created a domino effect that ultimately results in Rick crashing into a Smith family household, reconnecting with Beth, and starting his adventures with Morty. And that montage closes with him and Morty sort of moving forward and not dwelling on Rick Prime so much. I don't know. Did you get a chance to go back and look at any of those scenes, or did you not make it that far?
I did. I didn't watch Rick Turnal Friendship and the Spotless Mort, but I did watch Rick Murray Jack. I skipped all the beginning stuff with Morty taking the aging potion and stuff like that.
Yeah, same.
But which is, I caught the tail end of it. I'm like, oh yeah, that is pretty funny still. But I like the fact that Rick has gone in Rick Murray Jack, in that back story, we see how much he's been through and how many Ricks he's killed and how much pain and anguish he's gone, because he starts as a young man.
Yeah.
He starts when we first see him in 301, he's a young man in his memory. Through the course of the killing spree, we see him get steadily older. So it's assumed that he's just been doing this for like 20, 30 years.
Yeah.
And how dark that has to be. And in all of that time, what happens is he finally gives up. The last recourse that he has, like, I guess maybe I'll go back to his home planet, his dimension, and maybe he'll show back up. Like that's his final recourse, because he knows that that Rick Prime is a piece of shit, doesn't care about his family, but maybe he'll show back up, and maybe this will be the way to find him.
Yeah.
And that giving up, that being like, I have no other recourse, that leads him to bring us into the series, the viewer, Unity, to where we're now experiencing that point on.
Yeah, and I mean, you kind of hint at 601 Solarix, the premiere from season 6, where that's where we get the big reveal that Morty is from Rick Prime's dimension, right? He's Rick Prime's grandson. The now Cronenberged Earth is Rick Prime's original dimension. That was a huge reveal in that episode, but it kind of,
by the way,
for
a premiere episode.
Yeah, absolutely.
Those aren't usually chock full of reveals, right?
I thought that was sort of like glossed over and not really, like, they talk about it, but Morty's like kind of really forgiving of it, and they just move on really, really quickly in the season. But this is where, through resetting all portal travelers, Rick is able to actually come into contact with Rick Prime for the first time, possibly in decades, where Rick Prime is in his weird space base, and as we discover by the end of the episode, he's dancing naked in a glass tube right in front of Rick. Ultimately escapes. But I think that's that's the closest Rick has come to finding Rick Prime. We talked earlier about Rick in 301
Recruiting.
letting go of science, right?
Oh, sorry. Yeah.
Being willing to give up on working on portal travel so that he can be with his family. The parallel to that for me in Solarix is when he goes back to his original timeline, and there's that AI Diane that's haunting him, just always a room away, and
Hunter's gonna hunt.
Haunter's gonna haunt. He says a line. Rick says that the guy I'm looking for is not findable, and he starts to talk about the Smith family. He talks about Morty and Summer and their grandkids, and he really, again, seems to be at a point where he has moved on from this pursuit of Rick Prime, and he's like, I'm with this family. I'm as happy as a Rick can be. I don't need to keep doing this. You see actual growth with him letting all the people die and stuff on that original timeline. But then Diane's actually the one that reminds him, hey, if everybody's reset, he's probably trapped in his original dimension too. And all of a sudden, he's back in it again. And he's back in that hunt because he thinks he can get there. He thinks he's close. So yeah, I think that's another situation where he might have just been over it.
Yeah.
Every time he thinks he's out, they pull him back in.
It's a little bit triggering, isn't it? Like that where he's making progress, but in that progress that he's making, something as small as AI Diane saying that makes him be like, yeah, that's my trauma. That is me trying to seek resolution. I need to go back after that. Any progress he makes away from that, like it's a rubber band. I don't know what it is, right? Like it's easier to they say it's easier to be negative than it is to be positive sometimes. It's too easy to get caught back up in that negative and those negative habits. So I interrupted you earlier. I assumed that you were gonna mention this, but Rick Prime says a little bit later in the episode, I don't really team up anymore. And in 301, you had the question about is he recruiting people? What's he trying to get our Rick for? And so here's another example of Rick Prime being like, oh, so he did team up at some point in time.
Yeah.
Who did he team up with? Why did he team up?
And I think that for me is one of the big questions that maybe we get some answers in season 7. Maybe it takes longer to get into those sorts of things. But between him actively going out and looking for Ricks and offering them this opportunity to go travel interdimensionally with him to this point now in 601, where he's talking to grizzled Jerry and saying, yeah, I don't really team up with people anymore. That's not my thing. So he was definitely in a team at some points. He was working with somebody. So maybe we get more backstory of how that went, or maybe that comes out in some other form, or maybe the writers don't talk about it at all. But I think having those lines feel too intentional.
Yeah.
That line in particular feels too intentional to just be a throwaway.
Well, I want to point out that we haven't seen really any indication for all the other Ricks that exist that they have teamed up with anybody other than Morty, right? Mortys. They're making Mortys, and they're using it as
I would say the exception being like the Citadel with like SEAL Team Ricks and all these
No.
Yeah.
No, what I mean though by that is you don't have a bird person or a squanchy or a gearhead. You don't have a Rick team up, actual team up.
Sure.
You don't necessarily see a Vindicators. That's
Yeah.
not the best example, but you haven't seen that from any of the other Ricks so far. SEAL teams, Rick, yeah, yeah, whatever. Um, and so I wonder if there's a version, like a negative version, an Injustice League, if you will, of Bird Person and Squanchy and so on and so forth.
Bizarro Squanchy. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. I don't know.
yeah.
There could be. Yeah. I don't know.
So I think that's something cool. But so the last I started at the end. You worked your way to the end. The very very last episode that we have on there is Ritual Morpoon's Rick Miss Morcation. Um, and yeah, again, this is where Rick reveals to Morty, yeah, I replaced myself at the beginning of that whole Knights of the Sun thing, and eventually he's like, I'm gonna move past it. In order for me to move past it, I'm gonna bring you on board, and we're gonna find him together. So, what did you think about that episode? What did you think about the resolution there, Travis? And what do you think that does for us moving into season 7?
I think it's an interesting turn, right? Because at the end of season 5, the focus is so heavily on Evil Morty and closing out Evil Morty is the big bad, right? The destruction of and I always say destruction of the central finite curve. I think the central finite curve still exists. I think Evil Morty just escaped it.
Yeah, I
But
agree.
especially watching back some of those episodes this time, I was like, yeah, I need to revisit those theories a little bit. But yeah, I think I always love when a season ends with Rick ranting and towering over Morty and talking like a lunatic because he's got grand plans about the next several seasons or things like that, right? Gotta love when an episode ends that way. But yeah, I think it's interesting that it's no longer Rick's hidden past. It's no longer something that has tortured Rick alone. He is bringing Morty into this, much like at the end of season 5 when he had to push the lever with Morty as a partner. I don't think those sorts of things, Morty being truly a partner, were fully explored in season 6. I think they can go even further in season 7 with them working together to try and find Rick Prime. So I don't know. I think it'll be interesting. I'm very interested to learn.
I
Go
want to
ahead.
I want to make a real quick point compared to the pilot, right, where Morty is pulled into these adventures against his will.
Yeah.
At the end of Ritual Morpoon, Rick says something along the lines of, if you want to help, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. He's
uh,
inviting him. Yeah.
he's exactly right. It's a subtle shift, but it is a shift nonetheless from unwillingness to, do you want to help me with this? And Morty says yes. He goes downstairs and he examines that. So I think that's an interesting little shift there.
Yeah. No, that's a great catch. All right. So those are the episodes. Those are the backstory episodes. We've kind of come up to speed. We're ready for season 7 to start, but I think there's still a few questions that are lingering in my mind. We can kind of rapid fire through these before we get out of here. First one, do you think that Rick Prime cares about Rick C-137 at all? I mean, C-137 is spent his life pursuing Rick Prime. Is Rick Prime like, yeah, that's just another Rick, or does he think of Rick, our Rick, as a mortal enemy as well?
Oh yeah, well that I think that maybe goes back to the point about, did he do it on purpose to make Rick create portal travel, or was it just an accident?
Yeah.
If it was an accident, then he doesn't care about that Rick at all. Or sorry, yeah. If he meant to kill Rick, then he doesn't care about Rick at all. But if he did that intentionally, then there's something behind that act.
Yeah, and I feel like to be able to avoid Rick C-137 for decades, like that doesn't happen by accident. You're not just wandering the multiverse and Rick just can't happen to catch you. He's actively
Hiding, yeah.
or masking where he is, right? So I think there might be some aspect to where he knows he's being hunted, or he's just overly cautious to prevent anyone from tracking down where he is,
Yeah.
to include our Rick.
It's like in those movies where they're like tracing the call. Like I just watched The Fugitive with Harrison Ford the other day.
I just
right?
watched that movie last month. That's crazy. It's in my
What?
letterboxd. Yeah.
Oh my god. You'll also watch Wrongfully Accused with Leslie Nielsen, which is
Oh.
actually a pretty solid spoof movie.
It is.
It is, yeah.
Yeah.
Buzzin' Frog. Okay. Anyway, yeah. So where they trace the call, right? If you want to be found, you're gonna leave that phone off the hook. You're gonna let them trace that call, right?
Yeah.
But if you
Yeah.
don't want to be found, you're gonna hang up before they can trace you, and you're gonna run off, right? So the fact that Rick Prime has basically been hanging up and running away means he's still hiding. He's running away from something.
Yeah. Which
We'll see. We'll see.
which leads me to my next question, which a Rick like Rick Prime seems, based on all evidence, to be very smart, a capable foe for the Rickest of Ricks. Why, especially based on early indicators, does this Rick choose to run instead of fight? Like he seems very capable, he seems very powerful. What benefit is there for him to keep running from this Rick as opposed to just ending the hunt by ending our Rick?
Well, the first thought is he's bored, maybe, right?
Okay.
Maybe
Yeah.
maybe he knows that he's going to get chased, and maybe part of the excitement of living is being chased by somebody who wants to murder you.
The thrill of the chase. It's what makes life worth living.
Maybe it's a trap. Maybe he's not running. Maybe he knows that there's going to be a Rick that is his foe who wants money based off of the intro to this episode that I did earlier. Maybe it's his foe, and he needs that Rick for some reason. Like he needed to
Yeah.
single out maybe a diametrically opposed Rick in order to reach some overarching villainous goal.
There we go. That could be it. With that in mind, do you have any predictions for season 7?
I predict that we will see more Rick Prime stuff for sure. I think that I don't know if we'll get all the answers. I don't know if we'll reach a conclusion or a resolution to the Rick Prime stuff. But I think we'll at least get a little bit further. And I know there's going to be bottle episodes. There's going to be one-offs here or there. It's not all going to be canon.
Yeah.
But I do like that we're having a discussion now, not about are we going to get canon episodes? Instead, we're talking about we are going to get canon episodes. What do we think is going to happen? So
Yeah.
look forward to the discussions.
As a longtime fan of the show Lost, I never expect to get all the answers. And that is true in Rick and Morty as well. But I do think, we're gonna get more information. I think there's gonna be probably some episodes that deal with this entirely, as well as some episodes that maybe only like briefly mention it. There's a little bit of that rant at the end of season 6 where he talks about like sometimes things are just gonna be going on in the background. I wonder, will there be like Easter eggs? Will there be little nods to the hunt for Rick Prime in the background where a keenly eyed viewer may be like, hey, did you notice that? Did you notice that character? Did you notice, oh, Rick Prime was right there, or somebody was watching them? Like, I don't know. Maybe that'll be there. Maybe it'll just be something the background artists draw in like a Meeseeks at an arcade machine. Who knows?
You took it much more literally than I did. I took that as any kind of character development, relationship development between the family, between the characters. It may not necessarily be on camera. It may not be something that we see happening. It may be happening in the background. It'll be happening between episodes,
Sure.
between like, oh, maybe they reference a time they went to, Walmart, and they bonded over finding a new flavor of Red Bull. And they're like, hey, I haven't even tried this Red Bull. Red Bull's nasty, but this one is actually pretty good. Why do you try Red Bull? I don't know why I tried Red Bull if you think I'm all nasty. Like, well, I like the packaging. Maybe that's a thing that happens in the background.
In the
that they
background.
reference.
That's a background thing.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. Any other thoughts before we put a bow on this episode about Rick Prime or things to expect in the upcoming season?
What I'm still looking forward to, Travis, is what I think a lot of people are looking forward to is, are we going to get another trailer? I think the answer is yes, we're going to get another trailer. And will that trailer have the new voices?
Yeah.
That's what we are waiting to see before season 7 starts. I hope we get that answer. Well, we will get that answer because either season 7 will start without it or it will start with it.
Yeah.
But
I'm gonna do this count while podcasting actively with you. I'm gonna look. We got not 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 more Sundays without new Rick and Morty.
6 more Sundays.
6 more Sundays until brand new seasons of Rick and Morty are out, and we can look back on this episode and how wrong we were about so many things.
about everything. One of the things we'll probably have another episode for certain when they come out with the episode title list.
Oh yeah, it's a tradition on this podcast.
They've done it for the last couple of years. We're waiting for the episode release list, and once they do, we will be completely wrong with all of our. We never go back. We never go back to our predictions. We never do, and every year we're like, all right, this year we're gonna go back and look back at our predictions and see how wrong we were. But instead, we're like, we knew we were wrong. We don't have to do that.
Yeah,
anyway,
we knew all along.
That's an episode we're looking forward to.
Yeah.
But
maybe we can find like a niche person that is both not an actor and not a writer, and see if we can reach out, get a preseason interview going. We'll explore some of the contacts we have, see if we can make that happen. So yeah, if you have thoughts, anything that you think we missed about Rick Prime or Rick's backstory that we didn't cover in this episode, please reach out to us on any of the social media links that I rushed through at the beginning of the episode. You can send us an email, do all those things. Or if you have any other thoughts or things that you're excited for with season 7, we would love to hear about them. Please do that. If you're watching on YouTube, leave a comment. And while you're there, you like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff as well. Brandon, that's it for this episode, unless you have anything else to say.
All I have to say, Travis, is thank you all, Unity, for listening. Thank you for being a part of the show. Thank you for being part of the Rick and Morty fandom with us. And until next time, I'm Brandon.
I'm Travis.
See you later.